Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of r/PettyRevenge. In today's episode, apparently booking a seat on a train is not a real booking if someone else decides to sit there. Car salesman talks himself out of a sale. My uncle learns to shut up. Before we get started, make sure to subscribe so you will never miss a video. So let's get started. Apparently booking a seat on a train is not a real booking if someone else decides to sit there. I was traveling from Edinburgh to London by train and had a booked window seat with a table. I got on the train to find 4 guys sitting at the table. The one in my seat that was clearly marked as booked refused to move as he was with his friends and the train was packed. The ticket collector passed and I asked him to help. He asked the guy to move, but he refused, and somehow that was that. So what now? I asked. You can find another seat, but I have no power to move him, only the police and move him, and they will not turn up just to move someone out of a seat. There were no seats free in the carriage and probably not many free on the train, so standing to London was a possibility. I'm going to take a seat in first class, better surroundings, power sockets, and free tea and coffee. You can't sit there, you don't have a booking. Well, you could call the police to move me, but apparently they won't turn out to move someone out of a seat. I had a lovely trip with power for my laptop and a wide comfy seat. How do the staff not have the authority though? You agree to follow their instructions when you buy a ticket. Doesn't seem like they should require police to enforce basic rules. I used to work on the train from Belfast to Dublin. The conductor would not let the train leave if someone was breaking the rules, aka walk into first class, harass staff, etc. Many times the police would be waiting at the next stop. It sucks for other passengers, but that makes their walk of shame even more enjoyable. And because your seat was not available, you can reclaim part of the ticket cost, I think. How would you prove that though? Yeah, except the refunds are shit and they'll probably only reward him a very tiny amount, if that. Our train was late by an hour and we got refunded £20. So I imagine it would be even less for a seat reservation, as you don't pay extra for them, you just request the seat. In my country, the ticket collector would have thrown the guy out of the train, lol. Finally, justice. Loopholey becomes loopholer. I once had to argue a guy out of my reserved seat on a packed train. He was pretty aggro but did move eventually. Shortly afterwards, I gave it up to a pregnant lady. The guy was super angry after that. Wow. He's mad that you gave it up to a pregnant lady because he could have sat there and not given it to her. What a piece of shit. Car salesman talks himself out of a sale. About 7 years ago, I, 26 at the time, got a new job, which meant we didn't need our 2 cars, so my wife, 27 at the time, decided that we would sell both our cars and buy a bigger, nicer single car. We both had well-paying and stable jobs and, additionally, had the support of a low-interest loan from parents to fund a purchase. We did our research extensively and decided that there were 2 options for us, a Ford Mondeo or a Kia Ceed, with our preference for the Mondeo. We'd worked out all the financials and had the spreadsheets to calculate that we could afford both, second-hand. At this point, we found our local dealerships and booked appointments with both to test drive the cars so we could make a final decision. We arrived at the Kia dealership and all went fine. We liked the car and the salesperson was helpful. We happily trundled across to the Ford garage for our appointment and were met by John, the salesman. John was an old white salesman who had clearly been selling cars for years, and he had clearly made a snap decision about the young couple in front of him. John sat us down at his desk and proceeded to tell us how expensive and exclusive the Mondeo was, and he wasn't sure we would be able to afford it. He asked us our budget and we told him, but he didn't seem to accept this. He wanted us to tell him our salaries and other financial data, and we refused, saying we just wanted to test drive one. He told us he couldn't let us do that unless he knew we were serious buyers. We even asked if we could at least see inside one, and he refused that too. We left and walked back into the Kia dealership and bought the car we test drove earlier and were very happy with it, keeping it for the next 6 years. This wasn't enough for me though. I took a picture of the Kia and sent it to the manager of the Ford branch to say that we had bought the Kia because of the actions of John. The reply from the manager was surprising. He replied that he was devastated because their margins were so tight and explained that John would receive a reprimand for losing them money. Moral of the story: don't judge a book by its cover. Edit 1 to clarify, John was white, we are white. This information provided for imagery rather than stoking any kind of racial tensions. Everyone has met a John, and if you haven't, you are likely a John. When my stepmom was 23, she went to buy a car and she was going to get one that day. She knew exactly what she wanted and what price she would accept. Ends up with some real jackass salesman who claims he can't go any lower. She leaves and buys her car elsewhere. Jackass salesman calls her the next day saying he thought long and hard and he can probably get her the price she wanted. Cue shocked Pikachu face when she told him I said I was buying a car that day. I already bought my car. You lost out. I was a training salesman at a Chevy dealer when the 50th anniversary Corvette came out. It was an exclusive car and dealers only got one assigned. So they were selling for like $5,000 over sticker at a time when most cars sold well below. Here comes a slow Sunday morn and a guy dressed as a bricklayer walks into the dealership inquiring on that vet. Of course the seasoned salespeople wanted nothing to do with the idiot who looked like a bum and instead sent the training one to waste his time. 3 hours later the guy drove out of the showroom with that car. My commission was close to $4,000 on that sale. Had a salesperson ignore my wife when we bought an extended cab pickup in 1993. Another focused on highlighting the mirror on the visor on the passenger side. Third dealer was great. Idiots at the February 1st dealers didn't realize my wife would be the primary driver. Yes, I too focus on the interior mirrors when buying a car. Oh good lord. When my wife and I went car shopping for her last car, I lost count of how many times I had to tell the salespeople this is going to be her car, talk to her. My dad was a hard-working man. He owned a little family diner that had morphed into a very successful food manufacturing business. Long story, but American dream kind of thing. He wanted a Jaguar. He saw it in the showroom, it was a used one in mint condition, and went in to inquire about price. Now my dad was a big guy. 6 feet 5 inches, 300 pounds. He was also coming from the factory and had on a hoodie and sweatpants. The main saleswoman didn't even look his way. He asked her if he could get some information on the Jaguar. She said she was busy and would have one of her junior salesmen help him. Young guy. Been there 1 week. Dad paid cash for the car and hired the salesman to come work at the factory. The young guy was one of our best managers, really great with people, and went on to start his own business with my dad's help. This happens to my wife and I frequently, not just with cars but any large purchases. We've both been working 40 plus years at well-paying jobs. We are comfortable in jeans and t-shirts. We pull up in a 91 square body GMC and salespeople run the other direction. We laugh about it now, but it took some time to figure out what was going on. We just look around, figure out what we want to purchase, and then find the youngest looking salesperson. We approach them and ask them, would you mind selling us this, insert expensive item? We almost always pay in cash and smile and wave at all the old guys that ran off when we walked in. Husband and I wanted to buy a cargo van for business. Around 1999 some of the vans were redesigned, so what we were used to wasn't relevant. Instead of going to various dealers for a test drive, we rented vans from a local enterprise. We took them to our job for a few days. We did this for pretty much every kind of van available, just to see how it would pack and load, turn and ride. Way better than a brief test drive with the salesperson sitting there saying what I think? What I think? We were able to see firsthand the different features and pitfalls of different designs. And then we bought the best van for us. My uncle learns to shut up. This is actually my mom's story, but I've gotten confirmation from both sides that this happened and that my uncle did indeed learn his lesson. When I was still a baby, we were visiting my paternal grandmother's house. A bunch of my family lived there. My aunt, her husband, my grandmother, my uncle, dad's brother, and at least a couple of cousins. So my mom is sitting at the big dining room table eating breakfast and breastfeeding me. My uncle makes some bullshit crack about her feeding me, and my mom whips her teat out of my mouth and uses it to squirt my uncle, her brother-in-law, in the face with breast milk. My grandmother nods approvingly as my uncle is stuttering, then says, "Well, you heard the woman, shut up." Side note, this is the same grandmother who once backhand chucked a coffee mug at the head of a different one of my uncles for taking money out of her purse to replace the weed of his she'd flushed. She really didn't take shit from anyone. I aspire to be like your grandma. You really don't want to mess with Granny. She once chased 3 of my cousins down the middle of the street with a wooden spoon after they messed with me. Reminds me of my grandmother. She was an OG, carried a machete around her bag, in case anyone wanted to mess around and find out. Medea and your grandmother in a rap battle over those 2 pasty billionaires. My grandma looked opposite of Medea and was just as feisty. Your grandma is a force to be reckoned with. I like her. Ladies of that genre are a national treasure. If you made it to the end of the video, thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe and share, and we will see you in the next video.